Okay, now we're going to be starting on chapter 5, which is more PHP. And there's a lot of different things in this chapter that we need to cover that you need to really study as you go through it. There's a lot of good information. The first thing that they talk about are regular expressions. And those are just things that we can validate, match, or manipulate strings. And so in PHP, we have two functions that are built, preg_match, to check if strings match a pattern. And then we have another function that's for PHP, is preg_replace. You can substitute portions of a string based on patterns. And so learning regular expressions takes a little bit of time, but it's a very powerful tool to parse information, to break things apart, to see if text matches. You use, like, for instance, whenever we put in our email address, that's using regular expressions behind the scene to ensure that what the @ symbol has been entered. And so we can do this for a bunch of different things. And there are a lot of them that are already set up for you that are kind of patterns that are out there that you can just copy and use too. But anyway, the book had mentioned something about this regular expressions.info. And that is a pretty good site to go to just get some more information about all the different regular expressions available to you. There's specifically a PHP page too that you can look at and learn a little bit more about the regular expressions. And then I found another place that's pretty neat is regex101.com. And that way you can just go out there and you can practice regular expressions to see what kind of information is brought back to you before you actually use those in your code. But you really need to get familiar with these and get better with these, because that's a good way to have form input validation and, just parsing the complex text that you're looking through, sorting through. Okay, so then the next thing that I started talking about in the book was error handling. And that's always important, isn't it? A way to get out of an error gracefully in your program so it doesn't turn off the user. And so we do have different error levels messages set in PHP, which the book will explain to you more. And you can use the error_reporting, and that's just going to give you the level of the error message, if it's going to be all warnings or just errors, or it's going to crash the whole thing. And then you also want to use try catch blocks so you can then handle those exceptions. And I'm not sure how much you've worked with these in other programming languages, because I have a feeling this should be about your last class in this computer programming sequence. So I'm hoping that you have done more error handling already. Okay, and then you can just define custom error handlers with like set_error_handler for just specialized behavior that you want to happen. So making custom error messages that make sense are much better in production. So you can create those yourself. You can understand what's going wrong. And so then we have file handling, which is really huge. And that's just being able to read, write, and manipulate files on the server so we can bring things into our program, use that information, that data, and then send it back. And there's specific commands that we use in PHP to open and close these files. There's like a fopen, fread, fwrite. So that means you're opening a file, you're reading a file, or you're writing to the file. And then finally, you're going to use a fclose. You want to be sure that you fclose a file so it's not still open and slowing down processing. So use file handling for logging, for data storage, and processing user uploads. And you use lots of user uploads as a programmer. Okay, let's see what else. So uploading files allows us to upload files securely through the forms. And that we use a $_uppercase files to access the uploaded file. Then make sure that you validate the file type and size to prevent anything bad from happening. And then they talked about cookies and sessions. So we're familiar with cookies, probably, in sessions. And so we want to use sessions for sensitive logical information, like usernames, things like that we want to store. And then cookies are for less sensitive, persistent info, just like, maybe a password, or not a password, but maybe username that you use all the time on a website. And a lot of times we want to get rid of those cookies off of our machine. Okay, then we have relational databases in SQL. And so we're going to just retrieve app data using databases. There's MySQL, which is used with the PHP a lot, but now we're going more to a MySQL I, which is a newer form that you want to use with new code. And so you're going to connect using MySQL I or PDO. Then you'll run SQL queries for CRUD operations, which is create, read, update, or delete. And we'll talk a lot more about database commands the last week. Okay, so then we have the different interfaces, okay, for interacting with the databases. I just talked about those. And then user authentication. That's just securely manage our user registration and login. And finally, and this is what we're going to be using now in just a minute when we write this program, let's do this lab together, is third-party web APIs. Now, the book example where you can go and do the weather, go out to the weather site and bring it some information back, see if it works for you or not, and change it zip code to your zip code is really a pretty interesting, good exercise. So I want to make sure and encourage y'all to step through and do everything in the chapter because it's very interesting. And so anyway, we extend our application using these third-party web APIs by connecting to outside services. Okay, and we make a HTTP request to have those things imported to us. And then it handles the responses in JSON or XML, which are just different ways of formatting the data for it can be used, so it can be used. And JSON goes between all different programming languages. So that's probably the preferred standard now. Okay, so this is just some things for more advanced and secure PHP programming. And we'll look at this more in depth as we work a little bit more with XAMPP later. Now, as we go to the Frankfurter API 5.15 lab, a lot of this code is similar that we're going to be writing. It's in the currency_functions.php. As before, I've gone ahead and written the code here because it's too much to type in front of you. So I've updated what it asks us to update. So let's see here. The currencies, the dollar exchange rate, and the dollar exchange rate trend. And they're kind of all doing the same thing. We're just having a few different responses. Mainly we want to create if and else. And so if it's nothing in there, we're going to say error currency is not available for Frankfurter API. If it doesn't match, the response doesn't match. And then we're going to use our else and say what we need to do instead, and then print that value out to the screen. So what we're using to connect is this API URL and go into Frankfurter app currencies. Then for the dollar exchange rates, we're going to the same place. And it's just going to print out the exchange rates for $1 US as of whatever date. And then what was my last thing? The third one. Okay, that was just rate trend. Okay, dollar exchange rate trend. So I know this is probably not something I should do, but I'm going to go ahead and just send you this piece of code in a document and attach it to this video. So you have time to actually look at the code. and see what it's doing. Also, I'm thinking just talking to a blank screen is not that much fun. So if anybody thinks it would be better if we had like a Zoom meeting, so at least you're there so you can ask some questions and I can go over this stuff with an audience, I would be open to that. So if anybody would be interested in doing that instead for some subsequent videos, please let me know. I'm going to send you that, and then we're going to go on and start do the last one. That's going to be with the database.